Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Paddocks. On this episode, we're talking about the last race of the season, the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. We're sad to see the season end, but we definitely have a lot to talk about, so let's jump right in. On the episode, we have Amy, Rachel, and Mel, with LeAnne and myself, Chelsea, behind the scenes. To start us off is Melissa with some history on the circuit.
So, before we get into the actual track history, I wanted to share this little fun fact about how the city announced that they would be hosting the future Formula One events. The sport itself came to Abu Dhabi in 2007 in the form of a Formula One festival, the first of its kind. And it took place in February 2008. And it was not only the largest gathering of the sport itself, with the cars and drivers included, but it was also free. Yeah, it was free. Can you imagine like going to that? I just started like thinking of all the activities. It's insane. But anyways, during that weekend, the news had broke out that Abu Dhabi had earned the rights to hold the Grand Prix from 2009 through 2016. And then later that year was announced that Etihad Airways made a 3-year deal as sponsors of the event. A lovely 2 years later, and Abu Dhabi was added to the 2009 race schedule. The race itself takes place at the Yas Marina Circuit on Yas Island. And yes, I think Yas every time I read it and say the name itself. And it's located off the east coast of the city of the United Arab Emirates, or the UAE. The track itself is 5.281 kilometers or 3.281 miles long, consisting of 16 turns and 58 laps. In its opening year, Sebastian Vettel won the Prix driving for Red Bull Racing. And now into the 2010 season, we saw a drivers' championship win take place. It was a battle between Fernando Alonso, who was leading the championship, and Sebastian Vettel right behind him. And ultimately, we saw Vettel not only win the race itself, but also the World's Drivers' Championship. Now, through the years, we continue to see wins from himself, Sebastian Vettel, Lewis Hamilton, Kimi Raikkonen, and of course, Max Verstappen. For the 2021 season, Saif Al Noami, the acting CEO of Abu Dhabi Motorsports Management, announced that the track was approved for some layout changes and it would be completed ahead of the scheduled Prix. And on December 9th, 2021, a 10-year contract was signed between Formula One Group and Abu Dhabi Motorsports Management, agreeing to the right of holding the final race of the future F1 seasons through 2030. Now that you know a bit about the track itself, let's get into what happened over the weekend.
Before the race, there was a few fun things that happened, but there was also some really sweet moments, like the honor guard walk that they had for Franz Toss, the team principal from Alpha Tauri. That just brought tears to my eyes. It was so sweet. You could tell how much the team means to him and how much he means to the team. And Yuki's special helmet with the photo of him and Franz at the top and the thank you to him was just it just made my heart melt. It was so sweet.
Even Yuki's little message at the start of the formation lap, I believe, was really sweet. Him taking Franz for the past years together on the team was really sweet. It was just like a kind of like bittersweet moment. I can just imagine how he felt and that growth among the two together. But did you guys see the world's cutest video of Kevin with his daughter ahead of Quali? His daughter was about to like hand K-Mac his gloves in general, and like he was about to like take them, and she's like, "Nah, I got this, Dad," and really helped him put him on one by one, and then like closed his visor and was just like, "Okay, you can go now." He and Nico are the ultimate girl dad team, and I live for it.
I did see something online that was joking about how every team needs like a team toddler to do your pre-race prep of give them their gloves, put down their visor because K-Mag and Laura, it's become their little pre-race ritual when she's at the races. And I love the idea of just like every team having like a little kid who's just there to give the drivers their gloves, like help them with their helmet. I know a lot of hockey teams have done that in the past where they've got like a little kid who's like their water boy or towel boy, whatever. I just think it would be so cute and it would probably make everybody relax a little bit because how do you not just like kind of take a moment and like calm down when you're around a cute little kid? But maybe that's just me.
That would be really adorable. I always love the videos of K-Mag and his daughter. And there was one of Nico also in the post-race show on like Sky Germany, I think, with his daughter. That was really sweet. Getting into the start of the weekend, FP1 honestly was just really fun to watch because we got to see a lot of the F2 and like reserve drivers driving the respective cars for their teams. And I always find it so interesting to see how they do compared to the current grid and like versus how they're doing in like the F2 cars and any other like Pato was in for McLaren and he drives an Indy car just because they're different specs.
Yeah, I like seeing how much they can adapt to an F1 car and how quick they can in that amount of pressure. I don't know. I always just feel like there's a lot of eyes on them and not just only the team that they're practicing for, but other teams. But I was really impressed by Jack Doohan's save in the Alpine, avoiding the possible accident with Logan. Like he was just like smooth with it, and glad he was able to think that fast and avoid it completely. And again, it just goes to show like these drivers in general, like their reaction times are just like insane because to be thinking that quick and that speed, I wouldn't be able to do that. But we saw George take P1, followed by Felipe Drogovic, who was driving for Aston Martin, and our honey badger, Danny Rick. And Mercedes admin was so quick to post a meme on their socials of George in the classroom with like young children, and it absolutely killed me.
I feel like the admins really did not hold back this weekend. 10 out of 10. No notes for them. It was hit after hit after hit with the content, and I loved to see every single piece of it. But my favorite thing for FP1 was honestly seeing Jake Dennis in a Red Bull. I'm a Formula E fan. Pretty much anybody who knows me on this podcast knows that I do like Formula E. I didn't know how badly I needed to see that kid drive an F1 car, but he looked good. I won't lie. It was surprising. I wasn't expecting that transition to go so well because Formula E is so different from F1, but he did a really good job for FP1. I was quite proud.
I will say it was really funny watching Max's reaction on the pit wall when Jake was coming in and out of the pit. You could tell that that boy was like, that's my car. That's his baby. Like, he was so nervous about someone else driving his car.
I can just imagine their stress level when they're watching the other drivers drive their car, especially people like Max, or if it would have been like earlier in the season where like the points were really important for his championship and the constructors in general, where it's like any little thing can happen. And we don't want a Carlos situation where he doesn't even race on Sunday or they don't race on Sunday. So we wouldn't want that to happen. So I don't blame him for feeling stressed because it's also expensive and we have a cost cap to think about. But anyways, in FP2, we saw the drivers back for the session. And a bit into the session, Carlos hit a bump, causing him to crash into the barriers, bringing us the first red flag of the session. And shortly after the restart of the session, Nico had an accident after losing control of the car while exiting turn one. I'm just glad to see both drivers are okay because those impacts at that speed, dear Lord. And at the end, we saw our boy Charles take P1, followed by Lando and Max. Now, FP3 went smoothly, and we saw George finish out P1 again, followed by Lando and Oscar. And I must say, I love seeing the McLaren boys up in the top three because it's really fun to see them in the mix, especially Oscar. And being the rookie is like fun.
Now, for quali, it was relatively standard with the exception of Q1 for me that kind of threw me for a loop because our top three was Max, Checo, and Yuki. Didn't have that one on my bingo card at all. Like, not even a glimmer of a thought for that one. And we lost Carlos, K-Mag, Valtteri, Zhou, and Logan, who was hit with a lap time deletion due to track limits. I will say that I found the new AI system that they were using for track limits really interesting. This was the first race that I had heard them mention that it was AI and wasn't a actual steward checking the track limits. So I'm really interested to see if we see more AI systems in play next season. I just found it really interesting that there wasn't a human marshal keeping an eye on, oh, this person went over on this turn or this person went over on this part. It was AI, and I found that really interesting. But I'm also just a bit of a geek, so it makes sense for me.
I wonder if they're gonna do it like the soccer league does or the football leagues do, where they have the VAR, where essentially it's like something like AI, where it's like they look at different like angles and different like point of views and everything, like to determine if someone's like offsides or if a goal counts and whatnot. And it can be very controversial at the same time. So it'll be interesting how it works out with F1 because I'm just like thinking how they can use it with again within like track limits or with like certain speeds or who knows what at this point. Like they can catch anything. And if someone makes a decision and like the crowd feels a type of way or the teams feel a type of way, it can get very messy very quick.
I am interested to see how they use it. I feel like at least if they're going to use it for next season, they should start out by having both AI and an actual marshal just to validate everything and kind of be like, yes, that's off. No, that's not. Because AI is not always accurate, honestly. But Q2 was relatively standard operating procedure. Our top three was Max, Lando, and Charles, and we lost Lewis, who claimed that there was something not right with the car, Esteban Ocon, Lance, Alex, and Danny Rick. Now, Q3 was pole number 12 for Max for this year, which was honestly kind of cool to see. Charles, Oscar, George, Lando, Yuki, Fernando, Nico, Checo, and Pierre rounded us out in 10th.
I gotta say, Max's radio at the end with Christian about Helmut losing a bet and now owing Christian 500 euros was fantastic. Just pure gold.
I did actually rewind, turn up my volume, and replay that little bit because I wanted to make sure I was hearing things correctly. So Rachel is correct. There was a 500 euro bet with Christian and Helmut over if Max was going to get pole. And Christian was quoted as saying, "It's like getting blood out of a stone." And then Max followed that up with, "Helmut lost the bet? What world are we living in?" Like, I just love that little dynamic between Christian and Max because it kind of does give, like, father-son vibes at times. But it also got me thinking of if they're even allowed to make bets like that. I question how legit that bet actually was, or if it was just, like, a joke. Um, but if anyone's gonna make a bet for the last race of the season, it's pretty much gonna be Red Bull, especially after this year.
I don't know. I think they're allowed to make bets like that, like as long as it stays within the team, because they know the capabilities of their drivers. So like, it's more of a friendly wager rather than like you're betting on someone to make money and you know them and they don't kind of thing. I don't know. That's my guess.
Now, let's get into, I guess, the meat and potatoes of the weekend, which is race day, everyone's favorite. For me, race day didn't start off so hot because we immediately, after lights out, few laps in, get Danny Rick having an issue with the car because there's a tear off stuck in his brake duct. And it, to me, just felt like it was way too early in the race to be dealing with that kind of bullshit. But I mean, it happens, but I hate when I see that happen to a driver so early on in a race. It just feels unfair.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we had like 49 laps left. Like it was really early for that. And then very shortly after, the F1 TV directors and cameramen just did a close-up shot of Pato's face, and Pato's just looking into the camera. They know what we want to see, especially after a little bit of disappointment with Danny.
I mean, who doesn't love a little Pato Award content? The McLaren IndyCar team, his own Instagram page have tons of clips of just like his face with a wink. They know what we want to see. They know how to make you smile, and it's pretty easy if you just give people a little Pato content. It's not that hard.
Very true. That boy is a national treasure. And then at lap 16, we had some contact between Pierre and Lewis. Looks like Pierre had a lockup, and then Lewis kind of ran into the the back getting a little bit of damage to his front wing, not enough to have to pit and change it, but it was a little tense for that like little bit of time that they were kind of going over that. And then McLaren, who's had literally world record pit stops, had a 5.1 stop for Lando. That was insane.
That was really not something that I think really anybody else saw coming. It just made me cringe because they've been so good with their pit stops this season. It just looked like that front left and the left rear just really didn't want to budge. But I mean, they have, as Rachel said, they had a world record pit stop. And then you come back not too many races later with 5.1. Like that just was just yikes. I actually think I physically cringed when I watched it.
Yeah, and it did look like it was on one side of the car that they were having trouble with the tires. And I'm wondering now if that was from the damage that his car incurred last weekend in Vegas, because I feel like that could have done a little bit more damage than they realized. But at lap 19, we got a very wonderful surprise of Yuki leading the race. I'm here for it. I know it was because a bunch of the guys pitted, including like Max and Charles, but I'll take what I can get. Yuki in the post-race show actually ended up saying he had no idea he was leading the race.
We love Yuki. If someone tells me that they don't like Yuki, I don't think I can be friends with them. Because that was not something that I think at least anybody in PGP or really anybody who's a Formula One fan had on their 2023 race season bingo card, because I would have thought you were joking. And the fact that Yuki didn't even know that he was leading the race at one point just makes it so much better.
That moment in the race felt literally like a fever dream to me because I woke up during my little like mid-race slumber that I have and just saw him leading. I was like, what is going on? I was very confused for a few minutes, but it was crazy. But I loved it because I've really grown to love Yuki this season. And if anyone deserves those few seconds of leading the race, it's definitely Yuki.
Now, if we're going to talk about Yuki, we have to talk about his bestie, and that is Pierre, because that man was really sassy during the race. I don't know what was in his water, but the sass was just next level for him. And then it seems like after that sass from Pierre, things got a little hectic because we got some really weird pit stops. We got a 3.4 second pit stop from Mercedes. And it just kind of felt like at that point, everybody was a little off. Everybody was having a slow pit stop. And I get it. It's the last race of the season. And the pit crew needs a break because they've been killing it all season. But that was just, I don't feel like I ever remember Abu Dhabi or the final race of the season ever having pit stops that are that long.
Yeah, I was honestly just happy to get a 2.6 stop for Charles because Ferrari and their pit stops have been hit or miss this season, to say the least. So I'm not mad about that, but I think it was like the fastest stop for the whole race was like 2.1, I think, maybe 2.2.
They all need to watch Cars over the winter break and watch that scene. You know exactly what scene I'm talking about, and take notes from our boy Luigi on a pit stop. Every single team, all of them, including McLaren and Red Bull, because no notes on that scene.
Absolutely. And that, yes, 100%. They need to go and watch that, take some notes, figure it out. So we had sassy Pierre, and then we got sassy George. Now, George has been pretty sassy all season, I will say, but that radio message was A, kind of long, and B, I swear I almost choked on my coffee. He was not having it.
No, but like I literally choked on my water because I have never in my entire decade of watching Formula One seen a radio message have to basically scroll up on F1 streaming in my entire life. What was that radio message? Why? It did not need to be that long, George. You could have gotten your point across in a lot fewer words.
Yeah, that was ridiculous. And we also got a pretty long one from Charles at the end. And then we also had contact again between Checo and Lando. And then both, of course, were saying, like, he turned into me. And it was kind of hard to tell at first. So that was like, ugh.
I feel like this race really showed how long this season has been for the drivers and for the teams. And it seems like everyone was kind of just like, they're running on empty for sure. Cause that contact for me felt like it happened in slow motion. It was just the weirdest moment, if I'm being really honest. I don't know how that even happened. I don't even know why they were both blaming each other. It just really felt like it all happened in slow-mo. It was kind of an awkward one to watch.
Yeah, it definitely had a very odd slow-mo vibe. And then they were just, that was, I feel like, a very weird contact. It was definitely hard to tell, like, who, it really just seemed more like a racing incident than anything else. But who's to say? And then, as I mentioned, we got a nice little Charles radio message of him finally becoming his own strategist, or the whole team's strategist, and just trying to get Ferrari P2 in the constructors. Checo got a penalty for causing the collision with Lando. So he got a 5-second penalty, and that kind of caused, between him and Russell, it would have put Russell up and gotten Mercedes the points they needed over Ferrari, even if Charles not won over George, but like placed higher than George. And then we also got some really weird continual like pit stop infringements. And I was so confused about that for a while, and we finally figured it out. Because even the commentators were like, what does that mean? David Coulthard was like, I've never seen that in my entire time of racing. Apparently, the pit crews of whichever team the driver was on forgot their eye protection for their pit stop. So it would just be a team fine. It wasn't like anything to do with the race, but it was a lot of teams that seemed to be forgetting.
You know it's bad when David Coulthard doesn't know what something is, because that man is like a Formula One encyclopedia. He knows everything. It's a little alarming at times, but the fact that he didn't know what that was, to me, spoke volumes. Now, lap 53 had me shaking my head and just questioning Ferrari per usual as to why the hell they hadn't brought Carlos into pit. It was kind of peak Ferrari being Ferrari, and I really hope that they get it together for next season, because I'm really over just sitting there and shaking my head and questioning why they're doing the things that they're doing.
Yeah, they, I think, mentioned in the first few laps to Carlos that they're holding out for a safety car. That was kind of their plan. They were really holding out for that safety car. It did not pay off. I mean, we've seen teams hold out for a late safety car before, but that was kind of excessive. And then Charles coming back on the radio and being like, tell me what the gap is between Checo and Russell. Because he was like, so he could see about giving slipstream to Checo and trying to hold off George just to get Ferrari that second place in the constructors. I don't blame him. I mean, it's been a rough season for him and for the team. I do feel bad since that strategy didn't really end up working out. But I also wonder if Ferrari hadn't waited to pick Carlos, if it wouldn't have been entirely up to Charles to try to get them second, try to get them the points that they needed for that Constructors' Championship. But in the end, Charles did end up getting second in the race. George got third, but Mercedes did get that second place in the Constructors. The final kind of cool down lap radios after the race always make me kind of emotional. But this year was just, I don't know what it was, but hearing Max, who sounded like he was tearing up and like almost like crying on the radio when he was thanking Franz Tost because he started at Toro Rosso over the radio, just that was so sweet. And you could tell Max, this season's just meant a lot to Max in general. And I don't know, these radios just, they make me emotional.
You are not the only one, Rach. They make me all of my feels, and I loved that we also got to see that Max had officially led over 1,000 laps this season, which is just insane to think about. Like 1,000 laps. That's ridiculous. Some people don't even get that in their entire Formula One career. And he got that in a singular season, y'all. But as always with the final race of the season, we got my favorite thing to end the season, and that is donuts. And watching the RB19 do donuts was just fantastic because that car was so iconic this season. Red Bull really crushed it. Adrian Newey, I don't know what magic you put in that car, but keep it coming because I want to see that car do donuts or versions of that car do donuts as many times as you can give it to me.
Truly. I still remember last year when Charles got a bit lost in all of the smoke and he was like, hold on, I can't see. And then in Max's post-race interview with David Coulthard, Max sounded like he was talking about retiring. Like it was so reminiscent just about the RB19. And I was just like, this boy sounds like he's about to announce his retirement. I was just like, bro, it was so funny. And then my heart kind of sank because David Coulthard said we have 97 days until Bahrain. I don't know if I can make it, y'all.
I have a feeling you will maybe get a PGP movie night from us where we do a racing movie review. Who knows? Maybe we'll do a Drive to Survive watch party. We got options. But I'm right there with you, Rach. I don't think I can wait 97 days to hear the sound of Formula One engines. You'll probably catch me rewatching old races because what else am I going to do with the winter break? But 97 days just feels like it's going to go so slow. And it never does, but it just feels like it's going to drag on, y'all.
100%. It always seems so much longer and then it goes by in the blink of an eye. But hey, maybe we get a PGP live reaction to Drive to Survive Season 6. I think that would be pretty fun. Now, going back to the post race, that cool down room, that Max Verstappen podcast episode was very tense. There was a lot of tense energy in that room. Charles and Max seemed just like so not having George be like just so upset. It was really like Charles was like mad or frustrated that Ferrari didn't get second and Mercedes did. And then because Charles is upset, Max is upset, just in true best friend fashion. If you're mad at someone or your bestie's mad at someone, you're all mad.
It kind of was giving the best friends vibe when you go up to them and be like, "Do we hate this person?" And it very much so felt like that was that was what the conversation was without actually having to happen. But like if looks could kill, oh, George, honey, I'm sorry, but you would be so dead because good lord.
Even in the race interviews when it's like all three of them on the like long couch, like not the cool down room, but like the one that we see like later on where George like starts coughing and you literally like see like Max and Charles just like kind of glance at him and like laugh together. It's like, ooh, a little spice here. It's like they're making fun of him for like the littlest things, and it's like so petty. It's hilarious because like Rach said, it's like my bestie's mad at you, I'm gonna be mad at you too.
I mean, we do know that Max has been a little on edge with Princess George this season. So that wasn't super surprising that he was all for being on Charles's side.
Now, my favorite news that came out of this race wasn't even our podium finishers. It was our driver of the day, and that is the one and only iconic Yuki Tsunoda. Like, that just warmed my heart. I think Yuki deserves the world and then some because he just does. And that him getting driver of the day, the fact that this, to my knowledge, is his only driver of the day that he's had all season, felt so well deserved. And I do have to say, for people who don't watch the Sky Sports coverage, you probably heard this. If you do watch Sky Sports coverage, you probably missed Jolyon Palmer saying, "and thus conducts the podcast." The fact that F1 TV just knows that everybody calls it the podcast now makes my soul so happy. That made me giggle. I loved that because that is the end of our Max Verstappen podcast for now. We'll see if it continues next year, but that is a wrap on 2023 for the Max Verstappen podcast.
Let's hope he's writing up some funny material for 2024. But did anyone catch about Carlos's DNF at the end of the race, whatever that was? Because I checked Ferrari's Instagram posts that they do, like their post race one with their grid spots, and it says I finished P18. And I even checked Carlos's page, and there's nothing. So, like, what happened? I'm very confused, and I don't know about anyone else. I mean, it doesn't change anything, but it's just like, why does the app say DNF, and then other places are saying P18?
Yeah, that was really odd. I'm wondering if it was just like a glitch because I mean, we saw the glitch in the standings at the end of the race, which was very interesting. I don't know if anyone else caught that error in the last few standings, but for one final time this year, we got the F1 outro, the Dutch national anthem. I will not be missing that over the winter break. But I gotta say, this race, while not necessarily as exciting as Vegas or Brazil, I was still kind of on the edge of my seat for a while. And even when I wasn't, the radio definitely kept me entertained. And I'm very happy that Charles got P2. I was really, really hoping for a good last race for him and for Ferrari, minus them, not pitting Carlos until like the very last lap almost. It was great for them. I'm not quite ready to say goodbye to this season, but as a Ferrari girly, I am very ready to say goodbye to the SF23. Goodbye and good riddance, that is. Beside the point, though, all in all, this race was a great season closer, and I really can't wait for next year.
Overall, I think it was an okay race. I am happy for Charles getting his podium finish. I can never complain about that. And it took Ferrari long enough to get their strategy right for him, although it did come at the cost of another driver. Not really surprised there at this point. But I do echo what Rachel says. Adios, SF23. Never want to see you again either. And I'm looking at you too, W14, because you look promising even after that side pod change. But here we are. Anyways, but I am glad for Mercedes and Ferrari, making it in the top three despite how the season started for both teams. And congratulations to Max and Red Bull. They had one hell of a year, and I do have to give credit to them because it is due. They did it. But I did want to add, because I saw some clips of the post-race interviews with the drivers, and Danny's interview hit me in the feelings. He said, quote, "I got my answer I was looking for 12 months ago. This is still my passion. It's what I want to do. I am so happy for the Honey Badger, and despite the return and all that stuff that went through this year, I am happy he came back and he got that closure he needed and is at peace."
I also have to echo what Rachel and Melissa just said. I found the race a little underwhelming at times, but the radios do always keep me entertained. I, for one, was really, really pulling for a Ferrari P2 in the constructors. And while I will settle for a Charles podium, I really wanted to see that Ferrari P2. I'm hoping they have some better luck next year, but I just don't think that this year's car was it. I personally cannot wait for both Ferrari and Mercedes to just bin this year's car because it was just not it this season. As Rachel said, goodbye and good riddance because no thank you, that car was just not the vibe. I also, like Melissa, was in my feels over Danny's post-race interview because I just love seeing a happy and passionate Danny Rick. I really can't wait to see how next season goes. As the Red Bull girl, I'm obviously going to pull for Red Bull for forever. I've been a Red Bull fan for 10 years. It's probably never going to change. But I'm really hoping that Ferrari can get me rooting for them a little bit more. Now, for a little post-race fun fact, if you don't follow some of these people on social media, it did come out that this was actually Michael Italiano's last race with F1 after 6 years as an athletic trainer on track. He had previously been with Daniel Ricciardo and then with moving to AlphaTauri was with Yuki Tsunoda, and he's moving on to something outside of motorsports. So I wish him all of the best, and I'm excited to see where his career takes him. I'm also really excited to see who is training who for AlphaTauri next year, whatever their new name is going to be. We still don't know that yet. We also still don't know what is going on with Logan Sargent's contract. So I'm definitely excited to see what the F1 news world has for us moving forward. Now, for one final time in the 2023 season, it is our favorite thing of the week, and that is our pre-outro. Now, normally it would be a driver of the week, but I have made the executive decision that it really should be team principal of the week, and that is the legend that is Franz Tost. Hopefully, he has a fantastic retirement. We will miss you, and I'm excited to see where his journey goes. I know he's not really super active on social media, but who knows? Maybe he'll take a page out of James Vowell's book and make an Instagram account.
And that wraps up Abu Dhabi. Honestly, big congrats to Max and the Red Bull team for today. And let's be real, most of the season, but we'll get into that in the next episode. What was your favorite moment of the weekend? Let us know on our socials. Everywhere we are at Paddock Girls Podcast, except on Twitter. There you will find us at Paddock Girls Pod. Thanks for joining us in the paddock. See you next time. Bye.
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 Bye. Have a good winter break.